Hey everyone, this is Black Woman 7 here, and today I'll be going over our Pokemon Draft Series analysis. So, we'll be in this series, we'll be going over like certain Pokemon that are like used in the format. And today is pretty much a special episode because for every 10th and 5th Pokemon, we'll probably do a Mega until like I probably break the tradition or whatever. But for this 10th episode, we'll be going over a certain Pokemon that some people have asked me to go over and go in depth about, and that is Mega Kangaskhan. So, Mega Kangaskhan, just as some of you may know, is often banned in certain draft leagues and somewhat, especially in Gen 6. Gen 7, especially towards later end of Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, people have, or certain leagues have started allowing Mega Kangaskhan back in, often with certain other lower tier like or lower ranked or viable Ubers like in certain leagues. So since for that occasion I'll be trying to go over what Mega Kangaskhan can do, give you a good rundown of what it can do, its traits, its sets, the weaknesses it has, its strengths and whatnot. So that's all. So we'll get started. So as already as a pre-Mega or a regular Kangaskhan, you can already see its base stats is pretty average if you ask me, or probably above average. But as you can see, none of its aside its HP stat of 105, which is pretty respectable. Every other its stats is like just average if you ask me, and this would have been good in like the earlier generations, like up to like Gen 4. But once the power creep came up out in Gen 5, you could see that Kangaskhan was pretty much, of course, with all the introduction of fighting types, all those strong fighting types that came about in Gen 6, or not just but Gen 5, and then all the Megas, then Z crystals and all that shit, pretty much neutered any hope for a regular Kangaskhan to be used. People still use this Kangaskhan like as more so like a lower tier like Mon here and there, but of course it's not as strong as what it once was. Again, it has a normal typing, but oftentimes it has to like fight for that normal typing slot for like a Pokemon, let's say like a Blissey, a Meltank, or an offensive mon like Tauros, like, and even Mega Lopunny. So if we're talking about like Megas in this scenario, so. And speaking of Megas, in terms of its actual like Mega evolution, it actually gains at least plus 20 in each of its stats except HP and also attack. But attack it already gets plus 30, so from 95 to like 125. So it's really well rounded, almost on par with some of the Pixie Pokemon like Celebi or Mew, except for a special attack. So you're probably wondering, why would you want to draft Mega Kangaskhan in the first place? And what made this thing banned in the first place in most leagues? And the answer is pretty much one ability, Parental Bond. So as I'll just go over in the next slide. So the thing about Mega Kangaskhan is that it is pretty much probably one of the most well-rounded normal types in the game, especially when you look at its move pool and how most normal types have like an abundance of like moves, especially from Gen 1. Like most normal types, let's say like Tauros, like Kangaskhan, they had like a bunch of elemental moves like Fire Blast, like Thunderbolt, and then when Gen 2 came around, Kangaskhan learned a bunch of the elemental punches and whatnot, and then just over the generation just got a bunch of move tutor options like Wish, for instance. And now, come Gen 6, once it got its Mega Evolution, it pretty much was one of the strongest Megas in the game. And back then it had a, well, I'll explain what Parental Bond is right now. So Parental Bond basically allows you to attack twice and have the same effects as like the set, as the first hit. So let's say if you want to go for Power Punch, you get to +2 instead of +1. And if you go for a Body Slam, you have like the same chance of paralysis, 30% chance of paralysis, but your odds are far more increased because of course you're hitting twice. So, and I'll same for other moves like say Ice Punch, Rock Slide, and Fire Punch and whatnot. So, regarding Kangaskhan, and regarding how much damage you do with the Parental Bond or the secondary hit, In Gen 6, it did at least 50% of what the original attack was. So you are given that much like increase in attack power, Mega Kangaskhan often had like a theoretical attack stat of like, or I think around 213 or somewhere around there. I'm not so sure if they base it off of like base 100s or base like 50s, but still, it's pretty much high enough to where it could just wall break an entire team by itself, just clicking attacks. That's before factoring in parental bond. But now in Gen 7, Game Freak of course nerfed it to like, instead of like for the secondary hit, it's now a quarter of what the first hit is, which is still really respectable. Don't get me wrong, because like you're still getting an attack boost in a sense to Kangaskhan. So, and that's the thing about it. Because like parental bond is such a great ability in of itself, it just gives Kangaskhan like just wall breaking potential. It gives it like sweeping potential. However, there are some caveats to it, because of course you're attacking twice. Your opponent can also have like the same chance effects, or let's say you go, if someone has a rock helmet or rough skin, you take double that. So, alright, so let's just go back to the analysis. So, of course, with its high 25 attack and with power up punch, keep that in mind. Especially in some leagues where they allow it, you're still able to wall break or break opposing teams. So, and then not only that, it's balanced base stat total, and it's well-rounded like, defenses. Pretty much allow Kangaskhan to stay around, or just be very bulky or defensive, unless you have certain like fighting type Pokemon or just mons that are offensive, or just with either like let's say like offensive items like Life Orb or Choice Band, or or you just have a fighting type in general. So yeah. And then as you notice, it already has one weakness in fighting, so has no resistance. So keep that in mind. So you could probably just chunk Mega Kangaskhan all you want. So we'll get to that when we get to the weaknesses. So, and of course, as I mentioned, like normal types, it yields a bunch of like offensive and support moves, such as like Wish, Power Up Punch, just to name a few. So, and its coverage, as I mentioned, has some of the best coverage in the game, if you ask me. Like, with moves like Earthquake, Ice Punch, and of course, it has Serene Grace. it pretty much has Serene Grace built in with Parental Bond, even though the odds are slightly lower than what Serene Grace offers. It's still there. So, for terms of roles and usage, of course, Kangaskhan could be a physical attacker, wall breaker. Another interesting role that people have been experimenting with or using is now is it Wish Cleric. I think it's been a thing since like early in like Gen 5, but now that like people have used Kangaskhan more because of its notoriety once it got like its Mega in Gen 6, it's just like, oh, you can use Wish Kangaskhan. That's an option for you. So, of course, you could go all out attacking. You could try to be like a physical mix or special wall with the Wish set, and also you could just go with a Power Up Punch set if you want. So, for moves, Return, Body Slam, Double Edge, Fake Out, and and Facade. I forgot to list that one. Oh well, there's that in the bottom. So you already have a plentiful amount of normal type stab to like choose from. So that's great. But that's great when you're using Mega Kangaskhan or any normal type in general. So Power Up Punch, Ice Punch, as you see, like and Body Slam, as you see, as I highlighted them. Like most of these moves have like the same, like, well, they all have like a secondary, like, say they all have the same like secondary chance boost or whatever you want to call it. So now instead of like a 30% chance for getting a body slam paralysis, you have like a sort of like a 51% chance if you like factor in all the probability and whatnot. So and then say with Power Up Punch, you have like now +2 like attack. Ice Punch, you actually have a 19% chance to freeze, which is kind of dumb if you ask me. So, and then there's other options you can run, like Earthquake, Wish, Protect, Sucker Punch, Low Kick. Pretty much gives it Kangaskhan very near perfect coverage. There's other options like the Limited Punches, Rock Slide, Bulldoze, Rock Tin, which is actually kind of interesting, those two, because you could actually decrease the opponent's like speed by -2 if you want to. So yeah. And then for like draft selection, especially for like certain like leagues that allow Ubers, usually you would want to like draft Kangaskhan like somewhat. I don't want to say like this will be your first round pick, but this is something that you would want to like get like pretty like early, like around the around the second round or like third round, but by like, or you could just wait it out much later. But like what I said before, usually Kangaskhan's banned in most leagues, so yeah. So the first set we'll be talking about is pretty much the yellow attacker set, and you could pretty much just tailor Kangaskhan, just hit everything really hard. And as you see, you have return, sucker punch, low kick, and ice punch listed here. You could also run other options as listed here, especially for normal type moves, because you have an abundance of normal type stabs to choose from, like between like return, frustration, fake out, double edge, facade, body slam, etc. They all have their niches and uses. Like return is just like pretty much the more like stable of Kangaskhan stab options. Fake outs for priority, but you know it only works. It flinches the opponent for only one turn, and then like after that it's kind of null. Double edge is Kangaskhan's strongest move. Natural like hitting move immediately. However, it does get recoil. Facade is sort of like in case you know that you're gonna get like Kangaskhan like status in some fashion or some way. So that's something to use as well. And body slam is pretty useful just to paralyze the targets and give you. And essentially, body slam has like sort of like a coin flip chance to like whether to paralyze the target or not. So yeah. And you can actually go from there. You can just go from either dark fighting coverage, or ice plus earthquake, ice punch plus earthquake, which in of itself like they could just like either options like just give you perfect coverage with like normal stab and just allow Kangaskhan just to break opposing teams. And then you could try Adamant Nature or Jolly, depending on what you want. Whether you want Adamant Nature for power or Jolly just for speed creeping, turn base 90s, or whatever you have to say. So, second option for Kangaskhan is Power Up Punch, and of course this is the most famous one for Kangaskhan. With Power Up Punch, you pretty much get the +2 immediately, and while just doing some chip damage, which is pretty amazing if you ask me. So, since like not only you're just doing damage to an opposing target, you're also getting a little bit of chip, especially if like your opponent's like switching out and you have like hazards up on the field as well. So, and then you could just use like return, double edge, facade, or like body slam, whatever, as your stab move just to sweep or wall break. And then sometimes you may want to run like sucker punch or like some other coverage options. Like sucker punch is just there as like sort of like perfect type coverage with power up punch, with fighting plus dark. Of course, you could also go with the Earthquake Ice Punch combination as well, just to hit several types. And then there's for other options, you could try, let's say, like Rock Slide or Body Slam, Crunch, Double Edge, or another one is like Drain Punch, which you could just get Pseudo Recovery with Kangaskhan against their normal type Pokemon or like any Pokemon that are like weak to fighting, if you ask me. So the third option is pretty much deserves its own explanation. So, essentially speaking, with Wish Support Kangaskhan, you're pretty much forfeiting Kangaskhan's ability to be offensive while being more of a like sort of either a defensive or especially defensive like tank, or you could be mixed depending on the situation or the matchup. So, with its base 105 HP, you could pretty much have like very high you could pass very high wishes to like key members of your Pokemon that don't have recovery options at all. Let's say like Rotom or let's say like Ferrothorn. They want like recovery. You can just wish past them some HP and then you're good to go. So of course that's pretty much the main cross of the set. So as well as like other options like Toxic, just to scout out like the opposing opponents like moves or just ensure the wish off. So for any other like coverage option, normally you may want to run like say Body Slam just to like fish for those like paralysis, and then just to paralyze certain targets and whatnot. You could also try Facade in case like Kangaskhan gets status, since Kangaskhan unfortunately doesn't learn any thing like Heal Bell or Aromatherapy, so you could just run Facade just to like take advantage of Parental Bond, if you ask me. So yeah, and then like I said, um, it's pretty advisable just to pair this Kangaskhan with like a Cleric option if you don't have like, let's say, if you're not using the Facade option, it's pretty advisable to, or like you're running this, but knowing that you may have to deal with status, you may want to consider like something like a cleric option, like say a Sylveon or like an Umbreon, for instance, because they have access to heal bells. So another option you could try is Toxic, and Toxic pretty much allows Kangaskhan just to stall. It pretty much works in tandem with Protect as usual. You could probably be like a sort of like a Toxic stalling Kangaskhan. So, you could also try other coverage options, let's say like Bulldoze or like Rock Tomb, as I alluded to earlier. So you could just put the targets at -2 speed, or just go with maybe like Icy Wind just to like hit something like a Garchomp and make them like -2 or -1 if they are Scarf for some reason. So yeah. But likewise, support Kangaskhan can be pretty bulky if you ask me. Like, comparable to some of the Pixies, especially if you're considering mons like Mew or Celebi. So yeah. Then the other set that we have here is bulk up, or a bulky setup, which is pretty much Power Up Punch plus Wish, like put together in one. And it's kind of funny if you ask me, because like with both these options, this pretty much allows Kangaskhan to be like sort of a self-sufficient like sweeper. And sometimes you may want to and you could actually like pass on speed, because of course you have another option that could help you with speed control, Body Slam. So so essentially speaking, you have like pretty much like the goal of this set is pretty much to get a Power Punch of going setup going, and then you just paralyze your opponent with Body Slam, Paralysis, and just wish up what you need to like wish up. So of course this set doesn't have Protect. It might opt for like, let's say, a coverage option like Ice Punch or like Earthquake, Rock Slide, etc., etc. But like, if you really want to have like ensure the Wish Pass, then yeah, you can just run Protect over Ice Punch as listed here. So yeah. Like I said, you could also change the EVs of this Kangaskhan and also the other ones around, because like this Kangaskhan set is pretty much designed just to like sweep opposing teams, like just a slow and steady, like just slow and steady, if you ask me. But at the same time, it can also spread paralysis. If you don't have any other status options to use, let's say like Toxic, like say Thunder, like having, let's say, like that Yellow Magic can pretty much help you, because of course not only do you just paralyze your opponent and have them like let's say 50% of their cut of their speed, you could also just have that extra like 25% chance where they just don't attack you at all, and then you just get a free turn to Power Up Punch or Wish Up. So that could pretty much like decide a game right there and there. So that's, and then that last quote right there is pretty much something that my friend Jake put, so just keep that in mind. So alright, so in terms of partners or teammates you could pair with Mega Kangaskhan, 3 of them come to mind immediately. Having a Psychic, Fairy, and Flying like type, like at least 2 of those 3 is pretty nice, since of course all 3 of them resist fighting and have like super effective options against them in particular. So Psychic type Pokemon are pretty nice, since most of them have access to like, are mostly especially offensive, whereas Kang is more physically offensive in case you want to have like some sort of like a wall breaking core, or just want to have like a more specially defensive mon as well. So same with Fairy types, most of them are very like specially defensive, but of course they could also take Fairy fighting types very well. And one thing about some Fairy types is that they're like Cleric options, like Sylveon and Clefable listed here. So they could also just deal with like opposing fighting types pretty well. So, and you have Flying type Pokemon, which not only are they appreciate Kangaskhan's like pretty much wish support, since sometimes these guys could be switching in around rocks. They also like have access to pivot options like the U-turn or like yeah, U-turn, Volt Switch, Baton Pass in general. So these guys usually can deal with certain fighting types, and then once those mons are dead, or like Kangaskhan can just come in and just go ham. So yeah. For ground and water types, again, this is more so like the geared for especially like or the support Kangaskhan with Wish. Um, Most ground type Pokemon are pretty much like have some form of utility, and they offer, of course, like Stealth Rocks as well. So being able to help Kangaskhan with hazards right there, and just on can also have like offensive. Can also have like a very good offensive pairing in general. So some of them have access to like setup in some fashion, in some way, like Garchomp, Gillisquare with Sword Stance, Nidoqueen has Sheer Force, and like Crocodile has Moxie, in case you want to go in that route. So for water type Pokemon, again, going back to the Wish support set, like pretty much want to like heal up these Pokemon. I did appreciate having like some way of recovering off like lost HP aside like leftovers or some berry. So Suicune and Tentacruel, Finny come to mind since like those are some really bulky water types that could also take on opposing fighting type Pokemon. It could also like Scald Burn them or some of them if you think about it. So it just helped like Kangaskhan like take a hit or even just sweep if you, in general. So and lastly, you have fighting type Pokemon themselves, because normal fighting is a really strong offensive pairing if you think about it, such as like a mon like Mega Lopunny, but you know, a 2-in-1 so situation. So in this case, you basically try focusing on getting like a fighting like or like a very bulky fighting type Pokemon, like let's say like Keldeo, Conkeldurr, Kumo, Heracross, especially those that are able to take like let's say like opposing fighting type moves as well. So and just like pretty much dish out a large amount of damage in general. So in terms of like other partners, ghost types are pretty interesting, especially offensively speaking, because like certain ghost types can like pretty much deal with certain normal type Pokemon that can may or may not deal with. So oh, and also deal with like they can also switch in opposing fighting moves if they can, if they want to. But generally speaking, you may want to avoid switching into like let's say a knockoff at certain times. So then you have dark type Pokemon, and I think dark types are pretty self-explanatory. Being much dealing with ghost types that Kangaskhan sometimes may, for some random reason, might not have like coverage for. So obviously having access to certain dark type stuff, and also having certain utility, let's say like U-turn, Intimidate, Taunt in general, most importantly. So this does make Kangaskhan somewhat semi-weak to like more weak to fighting. So you pretty want to pair up Kang with like certain like dark type Pokemon that are bulky or just have like multiple resistances to fighting in general. So then you have pivot Pokemon in general, which I've already alluded to. So Scizor, Rotom, Duxie, all are pretty interesting options, since they also, some of them appreciate like having that wish support option for Kangaskhan, while like, and they could just pivot in and out. And then there's others like Crobat that just threaten like, you know, fight type straight out, or just weaken the opposing walls, be some of a stall breaker, and just allow Kangaskhan to just break through. So then you have poison types. Again, resistance to fighting is pretty nice here. But one extra caveat is that some of these poison type Pokemon have access to hazards like spikes and T-spikes, and also can be good absorbers for T-spikes, since Kangaskhan doesn't want to be dealing with like residual damage constantly. So it's gonna be worn down every turn in that regard. So, and not only that, they're just able to deal with opposing, let's say, it could be either offensive or defensive depending on the situation. Like, say, like Toxapex can be there to switch in on opposing fightings, or opposing like let's say like pretty bulky like water or fire type, and then like Skull, if you could just have it can be a very threatening offensive option, especially if like Baton Pass is allowed or SD, and because if you just Baton Pass and go with SD, you could just pretty much sweep with Kang. So yeah, opposing friendly wall breakers, if you, in this case, are pretty nice with Kangaskhan, because they offer some sort of like, especially like those that are like resistant or like have like ways in dealing with like opposing fighting type Pokemon, or just resistant to them in general. Like having that like wall breaking core is pretty nice in general. So Kang could just pretty much be a cleanup sweeper or like just break stuff. While secondary option could just like either clean or just like break an opposing team. So generally speaking, try to get something that's pretty fast, say like a Victini or Thunderous, like above average, at least like somewhat faster than those. But we'll talk about the cleaners in a bit. But and then there's like Kieran B and Tapu Bulu, which just straight out hit pretty hard and just can break opposing teams with just their stab options in general. So and then lastly, you have cleaners or revenge killers. They pair very amazingly with Kangaskhan, especially if like Kang is just there just to break, just to like chip down an opposing team, and then like it's pretty much doing the dirty work while like these guys are just gonna be able to mop up the opposing team pretty easily. Just try to get like a Pokemon with a high speed stat, or just those with good priority options. So yeah. For checks and counters, pretty much I've alluded to this for a while now, but fighting type Pokemon are probably the best way of dealing with Mega Kangaskhan, especially those that are really bulky, really fast, or like, especially, and those that are just really bulky and fast in general. So, especially those above like base 100, since of course Kangaskhan just can deal with opposing fighting types that are below that speed, but you know some of them may have priority, like say Conkeldurr right there. So, some of these fighting types can just like outright kill Kangaskhan with like let's say close combat or high HJK. So yeah, those type Pokemon are pretty much more direct counters to Kangaskhan in a way, because normally Kangaskhan doesn't have access, loses access to Scrappy, and obviously like these Pokemon, let's say Sableye, Kofag, Spiritomb, and even like really bulky ghost types like Gourgeist and Gelatin could just outright wall Kangaskhan. Of course, Kangaskhan can have access to Crunch, but some of these Pokemon like Kofag and Sableye could just outright wall Kangaskhan for days. So if you want a direct counter to Kangaskhan, that's pretty much the best you can get. So Steel type Pokemon are pretty interesting because of course like some of them don't appreciate taking like a fire move or Earthquake, but there's others that are just really defensive or just offensive in general. Let's say Celesteela, Skarm, Mega Aggro, just can tank most of Mega Kang's hits and maybe just wear it down with Toxic or just chip it down over time. And then you have like Kartana, which takes jack shit from like a low kick. So because of how like the weight mechanics work on that thing. So and you have Sacred Sword just to like cut through Kang with ease. So then you have Intimidate options like Landorus, Arcanine, Scrafty, and Goldfish. All these have provide us like the opposing team with like, or your side with like some form of utility. Let's say U-turn, Wisp, like Drain Punch or Foul Play or Spikes, hazards in general, just in case to like take advantage of Kangaskhan having a -1 attack drop. But keep in mind that with Parental Bond, Power Punch, Kangaskhan can get back to +1, so that's something to keep in mind when facing one. So you could also deal with Kangaskhan having a bulky Wismon, like let's say having a Mew, Moltres, especially with having like a Flame Body there, a bulky Ghost type like let's say like Dusclops, and most of the Ghost types that are listed there also have Wisp and also Weezing. Keep in mind though that Facade Kang is a thing, but it's very rare for the opponent to run it unless they really think that Wisp is coming. So yeah, then you have bulky waters and types, or just using Scald in general. Like again, as I mentioned, Jellicent pretty much walls Kangaskhan for days. Same with like Flame Orb, Marvel Skull, Milo, and then Mons like Slowbro and like Aloe and Suicune can just pretty much take on Kangaskhan for most of the time. So keep in mind that you don't want to let Kangaskhan set up too many power-up punches to be like directly passive in that situation. So yeah. Then you have Rough Skin, Iron Barbs, Rocky Helmet Pokemon, or whatever. Pretty much you could just for in this section, Garchomp, Thorn, and Dredagon just come to mind because they just pair them with like a Rocky Helmet, and just automatically just loses like almost like around like 2/3 of its HP right off the bat. And then not only that, or close to it. And then not only that, so they're pretty much like Gang is pretty much forced to like either like switch out or just go for a suicidal attack in that regard and just faint in that situation. So, and they also all three of these guys have access to like say rock, so they can stealth rock on against Kangaskhan with E. So they have to be very mindful of some options it can have, like say Ice Punch, like Fire Punch, or even special variations of them. So, and then you can just pair a Rocky Helmet with like almost any of these Pokemon I mentioned. Especially the ones with the highly defensive mons like Clefable, Buzzwole, Hippo, and Mandibuzz. Because like those Pokemon already have access to recovery and can pretty much or any Pokemon in general, like you could just like be able to get like let's say like 16 or like pretty much like around 32% of on Kangaskhan with, and if you have hazards up or spikes up, that could be pretty much helpful. So again, as I've mentioned, or as I alluded to, like hazard setters are pretty okay options, or those are like pretty much very bulky or highly defensive hazard setters like Oxpex, Fortress, Keshnoti, Clefty, having access to certain status options or just pretty much able to like run like spikes, T spikes, or whatever status option you have can just wear down Kangaskhan. And again, highly defensive mons are pretty good in general, depending on which Pokemon are available in your league. Try to look for like the best defensive Pokemon available, especially those that have immediate access to like recovery. So not like something like, unless like you have like Unaware Clefable, which actually can deal with Mega Kang for ease. Though keep in mind that like let's say like a Body Slam set could be problematic. So then you have Wall Breakers. Especially this one is more so for the if you're dealing with the Wish Support Kangaskhan, like. And most of these wall breakers, yes, you notice that some of them are megas, but I mean most of the megas are wall breakers in a sense. Like Delayed, RX, Mawile, and Mega Minichan all pretty much threaten Kangaskhan with massive amount of damage, and can just Oko like, can actually Oko or just 2-hit kill them at times, but it's best with their like stab options. And lastly, you have faster threats. Now keep in mind that like Kangaskhan has a base 100 B tier, so it's not the fastest Pokemon in the format. So you can pretty much try and wear it down with let's say like faster Pokemon in general, having let's say like Pokemon that are base 101 or above that have like really decent like defensive typing, let's say like Mega Arrow or like the Ansi, Mega Pinsir, or like Mega Pinsir in general can have access to like close combat, and Tapu Koko and Thundurus could just full switch and like around before they could just finally go for the attack. And then there's like dark types like Weavile and Persian that have access to foul play. If in case Kangaskhan sets up to like +2 or +4, you can just go for foul play, just knock it out right then and there. So yeah. So final thoughts on Kang. It's pretty much a very sturdy mon or mega that you pretty much have to, when playing with and against, you pretty much have to like figure out like how, like you pretty much have to like try and like figure out what's like the best option for it in general, whether it's gonna be like the offensive or like or just the wish support sets in general. So obviously those are like the best options for Kangaskhan, in my opinion. So, and not only that, like its multiple is probably one of the best of all the megas. It's not like probably like top 2 or 3. So, and it's like well balanced stats are pretty helpful in terms of taking opposing hits or just providing pretty much like interesting EV spreads if you're into that stuff. So yeah, and not only that, it's pretty easy to figure out like with that move pool and that bulk, you can pretty much figure out like what type of Kangaskhan you want to bring for a battle, and it can also be very difficult for the opponent to figure out what Kangaskhan set can be brought against you or them in general. So that's one caveat on running Kangaskhan. And the one thing about it is that you can pretty much build Kangaskhan around like a very competent team almost automatically, speaking in a sense, because like it only has, yes, it has no resistances, just one immunity to Ghost, but that could actually be helpful because like Kangaskhan can just blanket check some of the most common types in the game, and whether it's offensive or like or just a wish support, you could just have enough bulk or enough like offensive investment just to like break opposing or just like deal with opposing like Pokemon with these. It has enough attack power to pretty much two-shot like most of the format, so with the right options in a sense. So and not only that, like if you're that weak to fighting, you could just have a fairy, a flying, and like what, like type Pokemon in general, just to be able to deal with like said like fighting types, or just have resistances as well. Just pretty much already just build a like very notable team right there. That's like already a draft. That's like almost partially like half a draft right there. So in terms of like issues with Mega Kangaskhan, of course the parental bond nerf, the power and speed creep, as well as like fighting type Pokemon and rise of defensive mons. Just pretty much neuter Kangaskhan a lot in this generation. So with the parental bond nerf, like Kangaskhan's not pretty much OHKOing stuff as it once was, when especially if it has to now have run adamant just to pretty much guarantee 32 shots in that scenario. So, and not only that, like base 100 speed tier is not a very ideal option to be in. Though that said, like it could remedy that with running with say a body slam set. So yeah, and like I said with fighting types, like Kangaskhan can like it's not a Pokemon that you want to switch into with most fighting type Pokemon, especially if you have access to like say like a double edge or body slam, or you just have multiple resistances in general. So you could deal with that, but at the same time, Kang is still so forced out against them. So, and lastly, like defensive mons or just playstyle in general, just pretty much like outright like can deal with most Kangaskhan's. So you got to keep in mind that like if Kangaskhan is like offensive and does have power punch or whatever, you just have to like wear it down and like just have the right revenge killer, just be able to like, or walls be able to like tackle Kangaskhan and shit. So yeah, of course like that's not considering like seismic toss, but like with seismic toss Kangaskhan's obviously broken. So yeah, so pretty much the main goal of like dealing with any Kangaskhan is just to wear it down, and just like most Pokemon or Dreads, like just wearing down Kangaskhan is probably the best option in terms of like dealing with one. So, and yeah, like, and I would say like it's pretty much one of the more underrated Megas evolutions, especially like if you're allowing like let's say like certain Ubers, like especially lower tier Ubers in your league. So yeah, it's something that you want to consider in a draft, especially if like you're looking for like a wall breaker that could actually be a very defensive wall, but at the same time it's something that you also shouldn't like you shouldn't like go like think twice about, or think once or whatever. I don't know, whatever the saying is. So you just don't want to mess around with it as too often, because like Kang does have access to like parental bond, power up punch, and body slam, and all that other stuff that could just like pretty much like allow it to like break through and just like weep in certain situations, or just like wall the opposing team in general with like the wish support set. So yeah, so that's all I have to say about Mega Kangaskhan. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, as I'll probably usually try to get another video up in a week, maybe in a week or two. So hope you guys enjoy, you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. So see ya.